Hi, welcome and thanks for joining me. Today, on behalf of the Melissa Roberts Foundation, I'd like to present to you this topic of what are self-help groups for voice hearers. I'm Bruce Roberts and I'm the chair of the Melissa Roberts Foundation. So this module is one of 3 in our self-help group series. And what we'll do today is to really explore real-world insights into peer support, group structure, and building trust and safety, which is very important. Again, if you want to learn more detail about the self-help groups and any other aspect of the Melissa Roberts Foundation, go to our website, melissarobertsfoundation.org.au. One of the most important things to remember with self-help groups of voice hearers is that they are not therapy and they're not clinical groups. This is very important because there's an expectation that voice hearers will have when they come to a group that they're going to be given clinical and therapeutic advice. And we very quickly snub that's not what the group's all about. The group's about helping themselves, it's about a social connection, and it's about self-support. So essentially, the fact that these people have been in mental health services for many years in most cases, and they've been involved in different therapeutic and clinical groups. They've got a very fixed view of how a group runs, but we have to then melt that down and start them into a process where what we're trying to do is to come up with a group situation where they own the group, it's their group, it's not the group that belongs to the service, it doesn't belong to the person sitting up the end of the table there who's working to an agenda and talking to them. It's their group, and the success of the group is dependent on how they interact within themselves. There's no question that these groups are successful, but like lots of things, they're not always for everybody. But we've had a lot of success. I've run a lot of groups personally myself, and the dynamics of the group can be very different depending on some of the demographic situations. I ran a group in the local area in Sydney for people from the age of about 18 to 40, and I ran another group in Eastern Sydney for a group from about 35 to about 70. The dynamics of those groups are very different and the way that they interact. So there's no one group is the same, there's no set of rules or whatever that you have to abide by in the sense that this is the way that happens. Each group develops its own dynamics and goes from there. So they're often, with the groups, they're peer-led support space. When the groups start, often they're run by a non-voice hearer. Someone in mental health services, sometimes a carer. In other words, as someone who's put up their hand to come forward and to actually run the group. Our aim, though, is to get them to become the group to be run by voice hearers. It's very important that ultimately there is no non-voice hearer environment at all within that exposure. It is designed only for voice hearers. So the unique part of this, again, from services groups that they've been involved in, is that those services groups would cover a whole range of people sitting around a table with a whole lot of different mental health conditions or disorders. What we insist on here, unless the group sees otherwise, is that the people involved are voice hearers or people with paranoia, that they're the only people that participate in the group. What we've found is that when we start allowing other people to come into the group, it dilutes the benefits of the group, and the voice hearers just shut down and don't get involved. It's very important because voice hearers are very stigmatized. People who hear voices don't disclose very often, and it's really important that they have an opportunity to have their say around people with similar situations and similar circumstances. We find that's very powerful. People walking into a room thinking that they're the only people that suffer the way they suffer, and they see 6 or 7 other people that appeared to be quite normal, but they experience exactly what they're experiencing. They understand. There's a feeling of belonging, a feeling of ownership straight away. Having said that, people are very, very unsure to start with about the group because they're concerned about what they're going to be asked to do, and we don't ask them to do anything. The people can come to a group and do nothing and sit there every meeting and say nothing. It's their choice. Whatever they want to do is their choice. So the power of peer support. We find that the groups are very good. It creates a social profile. Voice hearers tend to isolate And by isolating, the voices have a field day and they actually increase their power and strength over the voice hearer. So getting around a group and talking about their experiences is very important. It builds trust and safety. They feel empowered by their experience, and they feel like they are in a situation where they are getting some understanding of their experience and learning various strategies and control mechanisms about how to manage their voices. Social inclusion is very important. We ran a group down in a town in the Southern Highlands called Bowral, and we had about 14 people in this group. I had the facilitator ring me one day and asked me, he said, look, the group wants to go to Taronga Park Zoo. And I said, well, okay, what would you like me to do? And they said, well, how do you think we should go about it? I said, well, I think it's really important that the group forms a plan about what are the key elements that they need to do to actually move forward. And they did that. And they came up with a decision that they were going to run a community barbecue in the heart of Bowral on Saturday and Sunday, 2 weeks in succession. Now, Bowral is a very prominent area for tourists, and Saturdays, Sundays, pretty much all years, it's hot and cold running people. So what you have to understand is that most of these people are very shy and with no social connection, but they push themselves into going out there and selling sausages to all these people for 4 days, 2 days on each weekend. And they raised lots of money. And they end up being able to get a bus and go to Taronga Park Zoo. Now, for a lot of people, that may not seem all that significant, but I can tell you that probably the majority of the people in that group never ever stepped out of Bowral in 10 or 15 years. So it was a significant thing. Social inclusion is so important for these people to move forward. When we run a group, we don't sit around a table necessarily and shuffle paper and talk about things. We may do that occasionally. Often we try to create an environment that suits the demographic of the group that we're working for. We could sit in a park, we could sit in a cafe, or we could sit in a room, or we could do a whole combination of those things. The whole issue is to be able to help them build up a social connection. It's very important. And because these people know that the person sitting next to them understands what they're going through, it's not a person who doesn't understand, the validation and acceptance of who they are as voice hearers becomes a very prominent issue. So what do they gain out of it? Well, some form of normalisation, and we use that word quite a lot. Again, because of the stigma that attached to voices or paranoia, we try to say people that normalisation, they don't have two ears, they're just like any other person. Hearing voices is a common human experience. It's just a variation from what the normal person experiences. So we try to provide normalisation. We try to give them an understanding of their own experience, but also of a broader nature of what the voices experience really means. We try to provide hope. Hope is the most critical thing within the process. We find often that people are disempowered through their involvement with services in many cases, often in a situation where they've been given a diagnosis, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, borderline personality disorder. And a lot of these don't have a huge amount of hope attached to them. Schizophrenia, it's a lifelong brain disease. You'll be on medication for the rest of the life. You probably will never work again. Go away and do your best. It doesn't really suggest too much in the way of hope. We don't have a great deal of place any emphasis or very much emphasis on labels because we've learned from experience that different people have the same diagnosis but have a very different need in how their approach to recovery should work. So we try to avoid labels and discussions around that sort of thing. Coping skills, it's amazing when you get 5 or 6 people with lived experience of hearing voices sitting around a table talking, how they will actually be able to share their coping skills. And how they learn things from each other because they're prepared to communicate, they're prepared to talk about their experiences. It lifts their self-confidence, and again, it gives them a greater social connection. So it's a very much a win-win situation. Again, though, it's not for everybody. I've had people get up and walk out of a group after 10 or 15 minutes for fear that they were going to be asked to talk, or they were going to be encouraged to talk about issues that are hidden in that box and still nailed down. And so again, it's not for everybody, but we know that we've seen a lot of people aided in their journey along the road to recovery simply by their involvement in the self-help group process. So what a typical group looks like: 3 to 12 members. Actually, we had probably our best group was in Albury, and they had 16 members, but they even got to a point where they believed that they should split the group because it was too many. But because the group was so entrenched in each other's company, they couldn't see themselves doing that. But any group's a group. One member's a group. I had a facilitator ring me once and say, oh, we only had one person turn up last night. I said, okay, what did you do? And I said, I sent them home. I says, well, you did the wrong thing. I said, that person should have, you had a person in a group, that you should have respected that person, and you should have had that as a group. Even if there's nobody there, you should sit there in the desk and you should talk about how you actually should be better running the group, if you like. Can meet weekly or fortnightly, but that really is up to the group. What we're trying to do here is develop ownership. We're trying to get to a situation where where the members own the group and they make those decisions. We find about 1.5 hours is a good duration. Daytime is probably preferable, not early in the morning, not into the night. Not early in the morning because often a lot of these people are highly medicated and they don't function too well early in the morning. So sometimes early afternoon is probably the best. They don't really like going out at night a lot, and it's a situation where they need to be comfortable. If they're not comfortable, if there's any threatening environment, then they won't come. It's hard enough to get them there in the first place. You've got to make sure that the environment's conducive to their needs. So a success story. Now, hearing voices self-help groups are not for everyone, and I've said that a number of times today. But for the majority, they are very beneficial. They exist in 30 countries worldwide. Many thousands of voice hearers attend self-help groups. It's a strong platform to promote recovery, but more important, it's a conduit between services and the community. Often we find that there isn't a continuity from services that once they come back into the community, this provides that continuity. Many recovered voice hearers lay testimony to the positive role of self-hearing help groups in their recovery journey. Very important. A powerful conduit between services, again, clinical support and the community. So very much an integral part of the recovery journey. I think there's a book called 50 Stories of Recovery, which talks about different people's journey, and almost to a man and woman, they all talk about the self-help groups playing a significant role in that journey. So, for a person who's out there who hears voices, don't feel that they're getting all the answers they need through services, but want to learn more about their experience, or they want to interact with other people with the same experiences, go to our website and introduce yourself to what groups we've got available, and see where you go. I think you would find it very rewarding. So that's a bit of insight into what a hearing voice group all about. So our next module is about starting your own group. In that particular module, you'll learn how to set up your own hearing voices group, and what it takes to run it, and the bits and pieces that you need to move forward. After viewing this video, if any of the content has made you feel uncomfortable, or more so that you feel like you need some intervention or support, if you're in Australia, please contact Lifeline on 131 114, or certainly a family member or a friend to support you if you aren't feeling well. If you're coming from outside of Australia, if you're watching this video from other countries, please look at your own support mechanisms in your country, but don't be alone. Always look for support if you're feeling uncomfortable. So I hope you found that useful and insightful. Goodbye for now.